Hi, welcome to Baca Systems' third and final presentation for the advantages of the Waterjet. As the first one we did was all about why you go digital in order to save on your materials, save on your labor, help your downstream costs, and help you with your quality of product that you're trying to deliver. Series 2 was all about the robot, why we use robots over gantry-style solutions in order to be able to provide highest uptime, fastest cutting solution on the market, small footprint, and the ability to be able to grow from a single table to a dual. And now this time we're going to be talking about the WaterJet. As we know, there is, if you've got no maintenance on the robot, and we know that there is maintenance on your WaterJets, then how do you manage the maintenance? What is Baca Systems' background in WaterJet cutting, and how can you help yourself making this tool a very valuable tool in cutting dectin and porcelains and all of the other hard materials that are out there? How do you make that WaterJet tool work best for you? So what we're going to do is similar to what we did last seminar. We got our friend Alan here who's going to help us come over, and we're going to get this party started with the WaterJet, cutting a slab, high yield material, or high material yield in order to be able to save the material and get onto one slab. And then to reduce the downstream labor, we're going to cut the sinks, the faucets, the radiuses, and all of that with the WaterJet for you today. So we'll have Alan get started here with us. As we can see, it's very easy to program. It's going to come down, it's going to check. It's the blade diameter in order to be able to cut all the way through the material. And then it's going to fire up and it's going to start cutting. While this cuts, we're going to lead into a prezo and start to discuss with the WaterJets really what the advantage is, what WaterJet we use, and why. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce a friend of mine. He's been working with WaterJet cutting for a number of years. He is affectionately known at Baca Systems today as the Water Boy, Mr. Jim Wogan. If you're a customer of ours and talked about WaterJets, you've certainly probably had some great conversations with him. He comes to all of our events and has a ton of experience in WaterJets. So I'd like to just thank him for joining us, and I believe he's on with us right now. So we'll get started. Obviously, you guys know the background of Baca Systems. Baca has been around now for 6 years in the stone cutting industry. We are solely focused on the stone industry today. But really, the background starts back 30 years ago, back in 1985 with Chuck Russo developing RPT, Robotic Production Technologies, which is a robotic WaterJet cutting company that really was going out there finding dull, dirty, and dangerous industries to provide the application of robots and WaterJets in order to help the process. And so, of course, we are in a dull, dirty, and dangerous industry with the abrasive garnet that you get with the WaterJets, with the stone, the slurry, the wet, the harsh environment that we put it through. Robots have been in multiple different industries for years doing that. So, we'll get the prezo up, and we'll get going. Is Jim with us? I haven't heard Jim start yet.
I am, Nick.
Hi, Jim. How's it going?
Hello. All
Jim,
right.
as it would have it, we're having technical difficulties with the computer over there. And so I'll let you start with the prezo, and we can start to discuss really, the background of your time. Because before you were with Baca Systems, you were with Chuck over at RPT, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was over there for 16 years, heading up all the WaterJet technology over at RPT. Thousands of robots we installed, WaterJet cutting around the world. All 6-axis robots, everything from headliners and carpets to door panels, instrument panels, to personal watercraft and pickles, as you'll see later in the presentation.
Yeah, excellent. And so, as we sit here and go through the next slide, and I don't have view of it, Jim, so I'm going to let you keep talking until I get a view of the Prezo. And so there we go. We've got a solution for every fabricator. Really, as everybody knows, we're known for the RoboSawjet, and it is the machine that's cutting right now. We've also recently released Robolution, which is our 5-axis saw and WaterJet machine. And then we have a number of other machines that complete the portfolio for a fabricator, including the 5-axis saw, the Edge Sync Pro for routering sinks out, and then you've got the larger Edge XL to really produce any piece. And then, to me, one of my favorite pieces still is the Miter X, as we did a previous seminar on the dedicated solution to cut miters. So with that being said, we'll head to the next slide. And you can see we've got 34 years of implementing robots and a leader in WaterJet technology. Again, Jim will start to discuss that. But really, what that means is 4,000 robots that we've implemented with Baca Systems and RPT over the years. And then in the time, and you'll hear our previous experience with some other WaterJet manufacturers, really H2O Jet is who we've been using. We've always been using them at Baca Systems. And when it comes to understanding the differences between WaterJets, which is the reason that we're doing this seminar today, is because there is absolutely a difference, not only in the motion control system with the robot, but with the WaterJets, how often you maintain them, what the cost is to maintain them, and then really you'll find that Baca Systems has the team and the experience behind you to help you manage the maintenance on it and keep those operating costs low. So we're located here in Lake Orion, Michigan, which is the heart of Automation Alley. There are tons of Tier 1 suppliers here that are doing WaterJet cutting every single day with robots for our automotive business here in Detroit, Michigan. Today, Baca Systems is solely focused on the stone market with over 450 systems installed throughout North America and some overseas. And so, we'll get into the background of the experience of the WaterJets, and honestly, Jim, I'm going to let you take this one because really that experience starts with you and some of the other key guys on the team that we have that have come from RPT into Baca Systems. So I'll let you kind of explain where you guys were in the past.
I'm sorry, Nick, you broke up there. What were you saying?
I was saying that you will be better off to explain kind of your background with RPT, where you guys came from, where Chuck was, and the different applications that you guys were doing back in the RPT before Baca Systems was really created.
Sure. So Chuck had started RPT back in the mid 80s. I had joined the team in the late 90s after I got out of the Navy. Back in the days of RPT, we were known as the global leader of all 6-axis WaterJet cutting. Again, like I said before, we did a lot of machines that were cutting headliners and carpets and door panels. And really, what had ended up happening back in the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s is we saw Chuck had seen an opportunity with all these gantry machines out there, WaterJet cutting, and the gantry machines themselves were just super labor intensive. They had a lot of mechanical issues. They had a lot of maintenance that had to be done. And that's when Chuck saw an opportunity to use a different motion system by using a 6-axis robot instead of the gantry. And that's what started it all. So after Chuck had sold the company back in 2006, I guess I'll back up to the next slide there. So some kind of neat stuff there. You can see when we talk about headliners, I guess we kind of talk about it pretty easily, but every vehicle has a headliner. We probably don't notice it, but that liner that's in the top of your car, there is a really, really good chance if it was assembled here in North America, that headliner was WaterJet cut by one of the systems that Chuck Russo and the rest of us on the team had built over the last 20, 30 years.
Nice.
The interesting thing that you see on this slide too is, for example, all of Yamaha's personal watercraft that are manufactured here in the United States are all water jet cut by the machines that were built by RPT. And I'd say probably about 8 years ago or so, we worked with Vlasic and Vlasic Pickles in Inlay City here in Michigan, and we retrofitted their whole entire water jet operation to run all H2O jet pumps and all H2O jet cutting head assemblies.
Yeah, I always find
So
that
it's an
funny.
interesting
I
fact
tell,
that,
I'm sorry, Jim. I always explain to our customers that you guys were doing water jet cutting of pickles, and it's just amazing what
yeah,
that process can do, right? From the flexibility of
yep,
quartzite to cutting pickles.
yeah. So we did all that, and we quickly got to the point to where a lot of, if not all of our customers were running 24/7. It became very important to us and to our customers to have support and to have the knowledge and the support to be able to support them 24/7. And that would be the reason why easily 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 of those that are in that demanding automotive industry, water jet cutting, are using H2O jet product actually. There was a large install base that we had switched over from another manufacturer to H2O jet, and now hands down it is the industry leader in automotive. The water jets that we're using today in the stone industry, there's really nothing more special about the water jets that we're doing today than we have for the last 30 years, other than really we're adding abrasive. We had a few abrasive jobs we did before in the past, mostly it was water only. But now we found, and as the stone industry knows, the water jet's a valuable tool, not only for yield savings, but for different features that the water jets can do. So.
Yeah, and so my experience is 20 years in the stone business, from installing, fabricating, templating, into selling equipment with Marmo Mechanica. I really watched water jets come into the stone market, and that happened in the early 2000s, where we were starting to bring in just XY tables. Flow had really come in and started to just sell XY tables into the stone industry, and was adopted well. But really, once the saw jet came to market is when the water jets really started to take off, because you were able to capture the advantages of the water jets of cutting your sinks, faucets, radiuses, and then you were able to take the advantages of saw blades, which were the straight cuts. So as you can see on this slide, which is my favorite slide when somebody asks me why they're looking to buy a saw jet, is that I can take this one slab, which with a regular saw or 5-axis saw could be a 2-slab job, and then I can turn around and in 30 minutes I can cut all of that into one slab: sinks, faucets, radiuses, backsplashes, cut to size, and everything's done. And so that's really when you start to see that value of the water jet. Now, as we continue to grow inside of the market for the stone industry, we're realizing that the materials are getting harder. The quartzites are becoming more prevalent today. The ability to be able to mitering inside corners, square sinks are becoming very popular. The radiuses that we used to have aren't as prevalent anymore. But what you're seeing is all of these other things that the jet continues to be able to do, and even beyond what is typical countertop cutting. We have a number of customers with the water jet that are using it for other applications. They're doing inlays. They're selling cutting boards off of their sink cutouts. They're doing dog dishes. They're doing all sorts of different applications, and literally with the water jet, your options are endless to be able to cut. And so, as we continue to release new materials as well, we find that the ultra compacts, the Dectons of the world, the Florum stones, the Lapitex, all of those are starting to really become more prevalent. The requests from customers, even in the past, who who weren't on board with saw jets are now starting to understand that the WaterJet, with these materials like these ultra compact surfaces, the WaterJet is huge because mainly it's mitered, and a lot of time there's some inside corners or inside radiuses that need to be cut. And so, not that you can't do it with a blade, you absolutely can. Using the right parameters with the right blade, with the right hardy backer underneath to keep it solid and supported, you can be successful with the blade. But the customers who have the saw jets, a lot of them are starting to tell us that they would prefer to just WaterJet cut the whole slab for a number of different reasons. I mean, the first off is, we know that those tables for cutting porcelain need to be solid, and so putting downward pressure on them, is tough on them. The vibration of the blade is tough on them, and so it can create cracks and tension in the material that you're trying to relieve. And the WaterJet really adds a lot of advantages of non-contact cutting without the downward pressure, without the vibration, allows the WaterJet to be an erosion process, which is truly what it is, and help you get through these materials. And so, when we discuss WaterJets, a lot of customers say, oh, hey, I've heard WaterJets are costly, and I'm going to let Jim get into this a little bit later because we do want to know. But we've taken an active approach to look at the customers and say, listen, there is maintenance on WaterJets. How you take care of it will absolutely dictate how you feel about WaterJets. But when it comes to pumps, we have the most reliable and the least expensive intensifier to own and operate in the market. And so that's a bold statement, but we like to show it, and it comes with a lot of data from our customers who have used both. And so those customers that have used both different types will tell you a lot of times, they'll say, hey, listen, your life of the consumables is fantastic. And then you look at the price of the consumables, and it's also great. It's half of the cost of some of our competitors that are out there in terms of replacing them. So you can get the same seal life as the more expensive parts, but you can get the price of the parts, at much lesser of a cost. And so we actively like to show this. We like people to understand, yes, there is costs on these, and these, wear at different rates. But if I turn it over to the water boy, he's one of those guys that knows these part numbers off the top of his head, and we look at him and ask him what these are, and he validates for us what these costs are. So, Jim, I'll let you talk a little bit because I don't want to take over too much, but I'll let you talk a little bit about that cost of operating and what you see between the pumps out in the industry.
Sure. So, when it comes to WaterJets, they need to be maintained. They need to be run appropriately. They need to have the right utilities to them. When you equal out all of those variables, really then it comes down to the gas mileage of your car, essentially. How long do the seals last? How long do the hardware components last? How long before those components actually start to wear and cause premature failures in other places? And that's where the cost of the components starts to come down to it, because if I was to look at a high pressure cylinder, for example, and I look at a cylinder and after 3, 4, 5,000 hours, the inside diameter is worn out to the point to where my seals just aren't getting the life that I used to, and I make a determination, an economical determination that I need to change out the cylinder. It's a lot different paying for a cylinder after 4,000 hours from H2O or Baca that'll be just under $700 versus a cylinder that's doing the exact same thing, but now from K&T, for example, that cylinder is closer to $1,900. That's a huge impact to the bottom line and a huge impact to your profits. We've always been big proponents of making sure that you're profitable. So this is one of the parts of the circle of life for us with our customer base, and that we need you to be profitable. We want you to be profitable. It makes no sense for you to spend all of your money and all your profits on spare parts and downtime. So.
Yeah. So, we'll talk about how you manage all of that a little later through this prezo. One of the things that we've done with all of the things that we know about WaterJets, with all of the things we know about the process of cutting with WaterJets, is to be able to increase the cutting pressures of the system and decrease your cycle times. It decreases your Garnet usage. So we have two different options. Standard option is our 50 horsepower, 60,000 PSI H2O jet pump, which comes on all of our systems standard. And then we offer an upgrade to hyper pressure, 100 horsepower, 94,000 PSI pump that will literally, and we've done a lot of testing here at Baca, literally double your cut speeds while using the same amount of Garnet. And so ultimately reducing your Garnet usage over time and doubling those cut speeds. So when you look at it and you say, hey, I've got a 35-minute cycle time, and 15 minutes of that is going to be WaterJet cutting. As you can see in the background, we're WaterJet cutting and WaterJet cutting. We quickly went through the saw blade, but I can double that, or I can literally take half of the total cycle time and cut that in half, effectively reducing 20% of your total cycle time and adding more slabs per day because you're able to cut faster with hyper pressure. There's certainly advantage, and certainly Baca Systems has the experience in the team to understand when that application is necessary and how we integrate that into your business. So how does a pump work? For the team for the people that don't have WaterJets, basically what happens is in the blue down below, the picture on the right, you see that's your 50 horsepower motor that then goes up and it goes into your top works, typically where you need maintenance. And that seal, that illustration that normally plays, will pump back and forth, and it will take low pressure in, pushing high pressure out. And so, there's a lot of reasons why we keep that open, but why we keep the whole pump open and accessible so you to be able to see it. But the first thing is so you can be able to look at it and just see whether or not it's needing service, because a little drip of water is what really is the first indicator. Jim, did you have any more that you wanted to put in on this slide?
No. Well, actually, yeah, if I could, Nick. So we made that decision. We developed and went through the architecture, if you will, of this pump of H2O Jet. As you saw in the previous slide, they have pumps that have beautiful panels all over them and doors and lids. We looked at this unit, and the way that we designed it, we wanted it to be open. We're okay with all of these things getting dusty, but a lot of people that come to us that have existing WaterJets, when they see this open design of this pump that we worked on with H2O Jet, they love it. They love the idea that it's open. They love the idea that they can walk past it and see water leaking out of it. They don't have to open up a door to it. So it's kind of a nice design. As you can kind of see from that picture there, there's a pan that's underneath the intensifier that will be the accumulator, if you will, for as a failure starts. It'll be in one location for you. And then there's also a pan that's in the bottom. You can see it's got a little bit of a lip to it. The idea of that lip there being that any leaks of any oil or water are going to be contained within the chassis. The idea, again, being that you're going to keep that pump clean and dry. The size of that lip is actually designed so that if there was a catastrophic oil failure, the pump will shut down for low oil level before it actually comes over the top of the lip of the bottom of that pan. So a lot of things in there that we worked on with H2O Jet to make it a very visible, very easy to work on pump, and very much in your face.
And it's low, right? A lot of people, get in front of our pumps, and if they've worked on a WaterJet before, they appreciate the height of our pump because ergonomically it's easy to work on, right?
It is, yeah. I'm 6'2". I prefer to be a little bit taller, but yeah, for the average height guy, it definitely is right there in the wheelhouse of you're not reaching up, you're not bending over. It's right there where it needs to be. So all of those were also taken into consideration when this pump was designed for us. So excellent.
And so the next component to really understanding the WaterJets and the maintenance side of things is understanding how we route the high pressure, right? And so we do it uniquely because we're using a different motion control system. We do it uniquely different from the way the traditional gantries are done. And, I'll let Jim explain why that is so important and the difference.
Yeah, so when you have the joint, so you have the center line of a joint that's going to go up and down, left or right, or whatever direction it is. You need to be able to accommodate that tubing to be able to accommodate that joint. Um, for years at RPT, we prided ourselves on that we always had, and now and still in Baca, we have a swivelless plumbing package. And what that means is that it just that, and that we don't have any swivels at all in our plumbing package. Those that have worked with swivels before will tell you that the swivel is great all the way until you have to touch it. Once you touch it, then it doesn't seem to ever perform the same and causes you a lot of downtime and a lot of heartache. So we don't have those. One of the things that we also done with all of our coils and our swivelless plumbing package is we've made all of the connections and all of the coils as readily available or as readily accessible as possible. A lot of the coils are simply just disconnect the ends, a couple of clamps, and the coil comes right off. We don't have to go into cat track, and we don't have to pull a whole bunch of pieces apart, and it's all independent and separate and by itself.
Okay, so a couple things, just to recap, right? Anytime you're looking at changing direction of the high pressure stick, we're using coils rather than swivels, right? And that's a much easier way to change the direction of a high pressure stick, right?
That's right.
And then the other component to it is that it is independent of any other utilities, any other low pressure water lines, anything that's sitting next to it that could get damaged in a cat track, and that it's easily maintainable as well. So you're not trying to slide your high pressure lines down this long cat track to get it to work, right? Ours is independent on the floor, easy to work on.
That's right. And in addition to all that, and as this is going to be a resounding message throughout the rest of this presentation, is it's visible too, which means it's right there in your face. It's something that's easy to see. It's not buried into something. It's not something where someone is going to say, "I have no idea what's going on." It's right there. You definitely can see it. So all of those are to make it so that not only is it easier to work on, but it's easier to identify what's going on when you do have a failure.
Yeah, and I always tell my customers that, when your operator, fires up the system in the morning and he's running the first WaterJet cycle, it's probably a good idea for him to just walk around the system and make sure he's not, seeing any leaks. Kind of give it this once over health and wellness check, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
We'll
so
get a
with
little
our
bit more
system,
into that.
it's super easy to be able to do that. So the other component to this, so we've delivered high pressure water to the end of the arm, and we're getting ready to do our cutting. You have to also add a garnet to it, correct?
That's right. So we have an abrasive delivery system. You can see the picture on the left. That is the standard bulk hopper. It's a pressurized hopper. It's pressurized and it moves the abrasive from that bulk storage to the robot itself. It's been standard issue for the last 40 years to use a bulk hopper like that. We now have a high capacity garnet tower, which will, instead of opening multiple bags of garnet, the paper bags of garnet, and having the opportunity of maybe more debris being introduced into the garnet system, pieces of bag being introduced into the garnet system, etc. We have this high capacity garnet tower that simply all we do is lift the lid on the bulk hopper, open the valve. There's 2,000 pounds of garnet that are stored inside that garnet hopper, the garnet tower. And once your bulk hopper is full, you simply shut off the valve, put the lid back on, recharge the bulk hopper, and away you go.
Yeah,
So
so
again,
so really, and we've been offering these for a little while now, and really anybody that's doing high volume with their robots really should be looking at the bulk garnet tower that you can put over top of our other hopper, to hold more material and to be able to reduce a lot of those challenges that that Jim was explaining. Um, so and you know, I guess I'll mention real quick because a lot of people ask, they say, oh, that abrasive is expensive. You know, and Jim can chime in on what the cost of that abrasive is. But really, you know, what it comes down to, in my opinion, is you got to remember that what you're using for the WaterJet for is bigger picture than what the operating cost of the Garnet is, because at the end of the day, it's pretty nominal. And Jim, I don't know what the going rate is right now. What are you seeing right now for abrasive Garnet?
Yeah, I think most of our customers are still sitting somewhere around that 25, 30 cents a pound.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about, you know, 30 cents a pound. We'll go on the high side. You know, that program, and we'll get out here and show you it done cutting here in a second. But that program just ran 2 Kohler 2210 sinks, and I know off the top of my head that a Kohler 2210 sink takes about 3 minutes to cut. So that cost you less than $1 in abrasive to cut those sinks out. Now,
That's right.
I then like to step back and I say, well, okay, let's think about one. If you had a CNC, you're going to pay that in router bits easily. Two, you've got a core bit that needs to be used before that router bit, or I'm going to cut it manually. And hey, my guy may be fast, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have to measure it out, find the center line, mark the template, turn around, grab the grinder, put a blade on it. Both of those are consumable items, by the way, and then have to cut those sinks out. And so for the cost of abrasive and the ability to save all of that material and downstream labor and then to cut a sink out in 3 minutes, to me it's a no-brainer on what Garnet is. And I will tell you for sure that in all the years I've been selling these saw jets at this point, I've never had a customer call me up and tell me that the abrasive Garnet cost is too pricey for the advantages of what it does for his business. Most people just look at it and absolutely consider it a savings to their business for what the saw jet's doing for them. So I'm delivering high pressure. I'm delivering Garnet. All of a sudden I get right down to the orifice, and I've got this WaterJet orifice. And so I will let Jim go through and explain DTI, the advantages, how we got there, and what it means to your saw jet.
Sure. So DTI is Diamond Technologies Incorporated. They've been producing the diamonds that H2O Jet has been using since the inception, actually, of H2O Jet. They have over 30 years of experience. Number one orifice maker in the world. And there's a lot of tricks to actually cutting diamond orifices. It is now by far the standard in all of water jet cutting, not just abrasive water jet cutting, but to use a diamond has now become the standard instead of a ruby or a sapphire. You know, we're dealing with we're dealing with the hardest known substance to man. And really what that means is, as we worked with H2O Jet over the years, the diamond is a lot more impervious to impact. Yeah, okay, there's a little bit of erosion that's going to happen, but really it's more about tiny little pieces of debris from coning and threading, or the seals, or the hoops, or whatever coming downstream, and impacting the opening edge of the orifice. A tiny little impact and a tiny little deficiency in the 360 degrees of that opening, your stream is no longer cohesive and no longer has any power to it. So using the diamonds is the reason. Using a diamond is by far superior to all the other products that are out there. And so we use that diamond in the IDE. The IDE stands for Integral Diamond Eductor. What that means is that the diamond is actually integrated into the cutting head. And the key to all of that is the way that the hole is punched in the diamond is perfectly on center line. How the round part of the diamond is perfectly centered into the pocket and into the retaining ring that's in the IDE, positions the center line of that hole perfectly in the center line of the IDE. And all of that means that water stream is coming perfectly straight down the middle of your nozzle tube. For those of you that have water jets from that are a little bit of an older vintage, you might have been told by your pump manufacturer that you should rotate the nozzle every every so often by 90 degrees. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it so that it doesn't look as bad as really what it is that older technology with those sapphires and the drop-in orifices were misaligned, and the stream was not truly coming straight down through the nozzle. It was causing excessive wear in the nozzle, excessive consumable usage there in the nozzle, but ultimately it was affecting cut quality and the amount of horsepower that you were actually delivering to the part. So diamond orifice with the integral diamond deductor and not having a drop-in diamond is what we use. We've been using since we started, and we firmly believe that it is by far the superior way to deliver the water through the cutting head.
Awesome. Hey, I thank you very much for that description. Listen, I know we're giving you guys a lot of information, and so I just want to remind you that we are going to do a Q&A section here at the end. And so please, if you've got questions, that are coming up as we go through this, just send them in, and we'll address those at the end as well. So, the next section is well, what does the maintenance look like, right? What does it take, and what are you looking for in taking care of a high pressure system? And so, again, I'm gonna let Jim take care of this because he's got all the experience in the world.
Sure. So every intensifier, whether it's H2O Jet, it's Flow, it's KMT, AccuStream, Jet Edge, every one of those intensifiers, when they're at full pressure and they're only supplying water to just the cutting head, just the orifice, they'll all stroke at a certain number of strokes per minute. It is very, very key. It's something that has been lost over the years in water jet cutting. It is super key to understanding how many strokes per minute your machine should be doing. For example, if it's stroking faster than what it normally does, then that means you've got some internal bypass or you've actually got an active leak externally. Versus if it's stroking slower than it normally does, that means that you're not quite delivering all the horsepower and all of the volume of pressure to the cutting head. And that would be related more to a clog in the line or a filter clog. So a lot of people ask me, like, well, how much does it, what does it really take? Well, okay, so one, we got to pay attention to the strokes per minute. But like I'd already mentioned before, we have a top and a bottom pan. We want to make sure those are clean and dry. Any of you that are on this webinar right now, if you have a water jet, you know that if we were to go back to your machine and it was spotless or clean and dry, and as soon as a leak started, we'd be able to identify it right away. But those of you that have had the machine and haven't been doing that, if you had a leak that started today and we went back there and looked at your machine and it was full of oil and water and dirt and no one's cleaned that machine in months, if not years, there's no way for us to know if that thing is actively under duress or in a failed state. So it's absolutely paramount to have good house cleaning and to be able to see what's going on with it.
Yeah, and so that's why I mentioned earlier. I said, in my opinion, if I was shop owner, the first thing that I would have my guys do on the first cycle, as it was water jet cutting, is I'd have them walk around the system and just look for the leaks. And so,
Absolutely.
I know that when I started at Baca, Jim and I actually had this conversation. It's common with a lot of other machines in the stone business, the line polishers, the bridge saws, all of the other machinery that's out there, even some sign the halos on the CNCs, they will drip water. And so as a stone industry, and me being in the stone industry for almost 20 years now, it's common to see a machine dripping. I mean, I've walked into a million shops where bridge saws were just sitting there running with water, and there was no operator around. But when it comes to a high pressure system, you're trying to take a gallon a minute and turn it into 60,000 psi of pressure. A good housekeeping and keeping the drips down is critically important.
You're absolutely right, Nick. Yep.
And so,
in addition to when you do have to work on the equipment, we're not looking to do it right there at the pump. As you see in this picture here, you got a nice clean bench, you got a nice clean vise. We want to make sure we have a nice clean working environment. It doesn't have to be sterile, it's not going to have to be surgical, but we'd like to have a workbench with a vise, have the proper hand tools. There are specialty tools that are required for the high pressure side. have those on hand along with spare parts. And another huge key to any water jet is the daily preventative maintenance. And again, to your point, Nick, that daily preventative maintenance is to look at the machine every day and to understand what noises that you're hearing. And if anything's different today than yesterday, then that's something that needs to be addressed immediately.
Yeah, yeah, I always, it's the first thing I do when I go into a shop of a customer that's had a machine, is I walk back there and I check, how tidy and cleanly they keep the machine, and frankly, it produces a lot of revenue for you. It is one of the single most important machines inside of your business to be able to cut the materials, shape it, and get it down the manufacturing process. And so keeping that machine in clean, tidy order will keep the downtime minimized and keep the maintenance minimized and the cost of operation low. And then the way to be successful is to give your operators or your maintenance guy a good, clean work area to be able to do the maintenance as well, with a nice bench and a vise. And so, listen, if you don't want to do any of that, if you say, I don't want to take care of that, it seems like it's going to be a lot, it's no problem. Baca is positioned to help you be successful. So what we have developed is what you see here. This is called WaterJet Made Easy. You'll see, when you start to see that it needs some maintenance in step one, you can go ahead, identify that it needs some maintenance. Go to step two. We're gonna provide you a suitcase. It's called WaterJet Made Easy. It's basically a spare intensifier, kind of like having a spare spindle for your CNC routers, which is very common. You're gonna take that intensifier. You're gonna unbolt the leaking one, put the new one on. You're gonna put that leaky one back in the suitcase, ship it over to Baca. Baca will rebuild that intensifier for you. We run them, we test them, we put them back in the suitcase, we send them back to you. By the way, I'd be remiss not to mention that one of the nice things about our TopWorks is that it's manageable to handle. It's not huge. You don't need a forklift for it. You don't need anything that's super heavy. You can manage picking that up and getting it into a suitcase and getting it shipped back to us and keeping it on your shelf for the next time. It reduces the amount of downtime, and for the smaller to medium shops that aren't running intensifier maintenance or don't have a dedicated maintenance guy, that you're in good hands with Baca Systems, that we have a ton of experience to be able to do that in our WaterJet Made Easy service area, and we will turn around and rebuild those for you. And so it's been very successful, and I know that Jim's been a huge portion of making that successful as well. So, okay, and so I'm walking back out. I'm gonna go and look at this slab. So as you can see, we're done here with cutting this. That slab took us about 18 minutes, maybe a little longer because we added some more WaterJets to this one. 21 minutes. 21 minutes, and if I can get a camera over here, I want to be able to show you guys what we've done. So I'm going to take this, hope that this helps. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to show you, if you guys can see, I've got a huge radius on the front of this. We've got our sinks cut out, our faucets are done, and I don't know how close I can get to this camera. So you can see, one, it's perfectly round. It doesn't always happen with some of the other machines, especially as the gantry systems get worn and torn. That making a round hole isn't always perfectly capable for those gantry machines, but with the robot it is. And then the other thing that I really want to show you, if I can get a camera close to this, is the cut quality. Okay, so the key to this is very simply, you can take cut quality, and it is dependent on how fast you run, how hard the material it is. Remember, WaterJet cutting is an erosion process. So the faster that I run this WaterJet nozzle across the top of the material, it's going to erode through the material. If I go fast, it's just going to work its way out. You're going to have to deal with a lot of WaterJet swarthing, and you may want to take that to a CNC for a Super Z in order to mill it down. If you turn around and you slow it down, to 8, 10, 12 inches a minute based on the hardness of the material, you can literally take a 50 pad and turn around and start polishing it. So it's critical to really understand what your polishers downstream are willing to accept. A lot of times what we'll do during the training process is we'll go and we'll cut two different pieces, 2 different WaterJet speeds. We'll send them down to the guys and ask them what they find successful to be. And so, you can take a 50 pad, you can absolutely just start polishing it if you run it at the right speed. If you turn it up and you're trying to run it really fast, usually the guys will do that because they know the next step is a CNC where they're running a Super Z and trimming up the pieces anyways. So a lot of guys ask us, that's a really, really huge question is, can I turn around, take that sink cut out it out with the saw jet, and then immediately turn it to a polish? The answer is yes. We have guys doing that all day, every single day. They go straight from the saw jet right to a polisher. So you've got that. You've got the bump outs done. You've got the faucets. You got the sinks over here. All of this is really great. And again, the really nice thing about the saw jet here, as you can see, is I've got 3 sides of access to this, so I can get myself around and I can grab these pieces and I can show you the difference. So what's great is, what I see for a cut quality here, which to me would be maybe just over a 50 grit to start polishing this out. Maybe a vector pad or something would get this smoothed out to polish. I could get this same exact cut quality with the 94K hyper pressure at twice the speed with the same amount of garnet. So, not incremental step up, but actually, doubling your pressure, doubling your cut speeds really turns into making a big difference on whether or not you're going from 60K to 94K in terms of cut quality. You're going to get the same cut quality just twice as fast. So reduce the cycle time on this. So if this was 21-minute cycle time that we've got on this slab, you figure we probably easily dealt with about 10, 12 minutes of it cutting. That radius, 2 sinks, 5 faucet holes, bump outs, and then you can turn around and get the same cut quality of it and cut that WaterJet time down in half. So makes a big difference. Okay, with that being said, I feel like Jim and I have done a lot of talking. Maybe we could turn around and take some questions for us. All right, so just like we did on the first one, I'm going to take questions on my cell phone. You can text them in to the login box that you're working on right now, and if not, or if you know my cell phone, you can just text me, and we can go ahead and answer those questions for you. So let's talk about the first question. We talked about using swivels over coils, so I'll explain that real quick. You can see it here. You can see we've got these coils on this machine. What you'll find when you're looking at a gantry style machine is a lot of times when they're trying to change direction from going one direction into maybe going north and south, you'll see up at the top of the machine, or maybe you won't because it's way at the top of the machine, you can't see it. You'll see a swivel up there, and that swivel is really one of those things that we stopped using back in the 80s because we understood what it was doing in terms of cost of operation. So, Jim, I know we talked about that. What is the number one single way to increase the components of the WaterJet? And I'm going to let Jim take that question.
Certainly. So, hands down, the number one way to maximize the life of all the components that are in the WaterJet system, whether again it's from H2O Jet or any other pump manufacturer, is to properly maintain it. And what I mean by that is to never run it in a failed state. Okay. If you have a leak that's in your if you have a leak that's in one of your fittings, for example, the intensifier has to work on supplying water to the cutting head as well as supplying water to that leak. It's like your car has to do 2,500 RPM at cruise instead of 2,000 RPM. You're burning more gas. And so when you run in a failed state, not only are you burning more gas, but you're wearing out high pressure components at a way faster rate than you ever would in normal. So the number one way to do it is to always run in a fail-free state.
Thank you, Jim. So I always explain it to you like this. Hey, if you were driving your car and you knew it was leaking oil in your driveway, would you be mad at the car manufacturer because your motor blew up? Doesn't that seem to make sense? Right? Like, if you know your pump's leaking, fix it. If you fix it quickly, it will be just a simple part. If you let that leak, like you let your car motor leak, you will run into a major failed state, which will cost you a lot more than what's necessary. So that daily walk around, it's critical. Keep your machine clean. You know, I know a lot of customers, they keep their cars really clean. Keep your machine clean as well. It'll help you out a ton.
Quick, Nick, real quick. No matter what water jet you have right now, if you go out to your water jet machine and you turn on your pump and you put it at full pressure, that pump should stop stroking. If it does not stop stroking, that is your indicator that you have a leak somewhere.
One more time with that,
You
Jim.
gotta go fix it.
Say that one more time.
I said if you turn on your intensifier and you know that and your cutting head isn't turned on, if your intensifier continues to stroke by itself, that means you have a leak somewhere in your system. It has to get addressed immediately.
Perfect. Okay. Can I use gray water in the pump?
No. The cutting water that we want to use, there are specific requirements that come from H2O Jet and the other pump manufacturers. Essentially, it's going to be something as good as city water, if not better. There is no way that any reclaimed water is going to have the same chemical properties as what we're getting from the city. And that's everything from silica and dissolved iron to pH, chlorine, and everything else. So there are specific water quality requirements that we have, that all pump manufacturers have. And I do not see that anybody is going to be able to be quote unquote the water boy and have a water treatment system to be able to get to that level of standard.
Okay, so and that's a key component too, right? Because the next question is using well water, and they've got very hard water with high parts per million, and is this going to cause an issue?
Yeah, so depending on where you're at and depending what the well is, it's entirely possible that your well is providing excellent cutting water. There's really 5 keys to the water quality that we're looking for. There's a few of them that we really can't do anything about. But one major product of the water is going to be pH. Obviously, if we're getting pH from the city, it's going to be as neutral as possible. 2 other key points are going to be dissolved iron and dissolved water. Dissolved iron and dissolved silica. Having dissolved iron and dissolved silica, that gets through the filters, and it's very, very bad for all the metal-to-metal sealing components we have. And again, the city does not give us very high-level silica and high-level iron, whereas we might get that from a well. When you start getting into total dissolved solids and hardness, then you start getting into hardness is easy enough to take care of with a simple salt softener. You start getting into total dissolved solids, and that's a conversation that we'd like to have offline and talk about the pros and cons of how to take care of that.
Okay. Okay, so we got one more question that we'll answer here, and it is, what type of repeatability accuracy do you have with the machine, and for multiple parts? And so, back in the day, we used to do a lot of these repeatability answers and questions. And, the fact of the matter is, if you looked at the beginning of the slide, we have 450 installs out there today. We've got customers that are using 3, 4, 5, 10 robots that are out there running our machines every single day. You can see by the parts that we just cut that I can cut with a saw blade, and then I can turn around and I can jump inside of that saw blade with the WaterJet and be right on line in order to be able to cut that sink out. So you've got a little bit of just a hair of water jet fat that you want in order to be able to trim it out. The accuracy and repeatability on these machines are amazing. It's what keeps our customers coming back and continuing to call us and ask for more solutions, because the robot is highly reliable. It's a very easy machine to use, as you can see. It's very productive. It's a small footprint. Single-handedly one of the best machines that can affect your profitability inside of your shop. And so with that, I'm going to thank Jim for his time. Jim, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm going to always invite you guys to fly to Detroit, as we want to be able to show you these machines live, take your questions one-on-one, and be able to show you shops locally in the area that have our robots that are very successful and happy with the machines. You can like us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and then if you want one of our sales reps to contact you, please reach out. We'd be happy to come to your facility and talk about your production and fabrication needs. And as always, thank you again for joining us on the Virtual Fabrication Seminar, and we'll see you next time.
And Mama said, Alex